it worked.
Wow.
So I know where this technology can go.
Yeah.
I'm not just speculating; it can be done already.
Yeah.
And the elephant in the living room is, when will someone else be doing it?
Yeah, totally.
So it's moving along. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's fascinating and scary at the same time, eh? Yeah. But you also said you kind of, in your email, you elaborated on a couple of examples that you know,
yes.
like you can't even park your car anymore without having a smartphone.
Yeah, well, I've actually found that in New Zealand, that hasn't happened to me. I have been told that I can use the phone, and the instructions have suggested that's the only way I can park, but it hasn't been. There have been other options. Certainly in the UK, though, there were car parks there in 2010, 2012, somewhere around then. Even then, you could not park in if you didn't have a phone.
Wow.
And I thought, what? You know what's going on here? Ironically, my 2G New Zealand phone, I could still make phone calls in it over there and in Europe, and in Belgium I could use that phone and ring people up.
Wow.
But no, if you didn't have a smartphone, you couldn't actually park in the car park. And I thought, what am I going to do about that? The day will come when I'm just going to have a phone just so I can park my car. And certainly there are some things that you can't do. There are some fast food places you can't get deliveries if you don't use a phone. Most of them, though, you can just ring them up and talk to them, and they want the money, So it hasn't made a very big difference to me yet, but I can see it coming. And what with the government and COVID, and even the words of Derek McCormick's document, the word must use the app. I notice people with phones aren't even using it. Very few people are complying with that. If I had a phone, I would comply with it, but I keep records. If I go to a supermarket, I know what time I went in there. And it's a funny thing that the receipt you get from the supermarket has got the time that you left printed on it. To the last second, All I do is put it in my pocket and stick it on a spike on a piece of paper. So if I've been anywhere and spent any money, I know when it was, and I keep that information.
Great.
So I'm not wanting to be antisocial. If a situation arose where I could see a definite reason to say, well, my records are inadequate, and I have to have a smartphone or I'm endangering the public, I think, well, it's a responsible thing to do. But the idea, the government saying, we're toying with the idea of using the app compulsory. Well, what's going to happen? The police going to come along and say to you, show us your smartphone? If you haven't got one, I'm sorry, you've broken the law. It smacks a little bit of a totalitarian state to me.
Totally. Yeah, but that's super interesting. So until now, kind of, with the parking and with the fast food delivery and also with COVID, like you always come up with workarounds, which is super interesting, right? Did you come up with any challenges, for example, where you are sitting in the car, right, where you just, please look up like the best fish and chip shop. Do you have any other situations where you were reliant on other people, or where you were by yourself and said, now I really want to use like a smartphone?
I'm pretty good at finding my way around cities without a GPS or a phone. So I've never really felt sort of stuck there. I've got a reasonable sense of direction, and I can read a map. And I've been trained for other reasons to read maps and charts and things. So I haven't been desperate. It could be convenient, but I've also found people using those things because of the delays when they're travelling along, getting the information. They've driven past the street that they needed to turn around, or they come to a roundabout and it says take the fifth turn off on the roundabout, and there's only 4 because their software's not been updated. And sometimes they haven't helped much. So I don't feel desperate that I actually need one for those purposes. The times that I have relied on other people are memorable, and that there's so few I remember them, like the fish and chips. That was several years ago, but I remember that. There was one other time I was stuck at an international airport, and I needed some internet access really, and computers that were available to the public were run down and broken because everyone assumed that everyone had a phone.
Yeah.
So I got my 2G phone out and I rang a friend up who had a smartphone and said, look, could you just check something out for me?
Yeah.
And I remember that, and he did.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I could count the number of times on 4 of my fingers that I've had to do that in the last 15 years.
Wow.
So it's not been something I've been desperate to do.
Yeah.
But I was grateful for the times that I did.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. And you were saying, with the kind of you never really come into the situations when you can really rely on other people and also on your phone, which, you can reach actually everyone, so to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you sometimes, what is your perception around that, that the world kind of expect that everyone now has a smartphone? What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting. I had a conversation with a staff member here yesterday, and she was telling me about how they'd got around a problem that they had communicating with the students. And she'd worked out the system, and there was this new app that they could download. And I said, well, hang on a minute, what if they haven't got a phone? And she looked at me and said, what? What? No, of course they'll have a phone. And I said, well, I haven't got one. I've never had one. And she looked at me, quite amazed. And I sort of think, well, people who have phones generally assume everyone else has one.
Mm-hmm.
And why wouldn't they? Because they've got one. And the reason they have one is because, well, it's the thing you have to do. It's like putting your trousers on in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't go out naked.
Yeah.
And they feel naked without one. Well, I don't think I'd get to that point. One of the reasons that I stopped, as I said earlier, with certain technology, I didn't want to become dependent on it.
Mm-hmm.
But my 2G phone, I usually don't carry it around with me. It will fit in my pocket. But usually it's not with me unless I've told somebody I will be available. And I make a point of slipping it in my pocket then. Just say, ring me on my cell phone, I'll be available. So I don't think the availability thing would be an issue with me.
Yeah.
But I think from my observation of people who are dependent on their smartphones, it's not availability of them to other people that is the issue. Generally, there's something they feel they need to be doing or want to be doing. They've got the phone in front of them, they're flicking through something and looking at something. And I find when I'm with a group of people who are doing that, I often don't know if they've drifted off onto another planet and they're no longer communicating with me, or they're investigating something that I've just said and they're going to come back with something really constructive and interesting about the conversation. It's very hard to know, and the eye contact's gone. They're down at their phone and their fingers going, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, were we still connected here? So there's a whole world of the way smartphone users think, and I suppose I'm not part of it, but I don't feel that it matters. It's sort of part of the digital world, and I mean, you can connect to the digital world with a computer. You don't need a smartphone. I've got 1 or 2 social media accounts that various friends have made for me. My ex-girlfriend's made a Facebook account for me that I've got there and put a whole lot of pictures on it. I hardly ever use it, but it's there and it exists. Occasionally, once every 3 months, I check just in case somebody's said something, that's relevant. I wouldn't delete it. I don't see it as a problem. It's all right. And there's lots of stuff on there, but it's all been put there by other people. It's not me, it's somebody else, tuning along, and I just wonder, the people tend to have what you might call a digital persona. The person that they represent themselves as on digital media and the real them. And I do worry about the real them sometimes.
Why so, Brett? Why do you worry about the real?
Some of my friends' children just what I see what's happened, and see that